Chapter 4 Viveka and Vairagya. A commander-in-chief of a country admitted his two sons in a Gurukul, residential school in India, with pupils living near the Guru. Both the children received all kinds of education from the Gurukul by rendering their services to the Guru. The commander used to visit the Gurukul once in a while to see his children in the Gurukul. He told the children about his responsibility only when the children started getting the awareness. Children, our country has been invaded by the king of an enemy country. The king of our country has been absconding along with the minister. I have also gone underground. I have to save our country from the enemy and hand it over to our king. I have been putting in the entire endeavor that I can. In case I fail to fulfill my responsibility in my lifetime, you should assume my responsibility to save the country and hand over to our king. That is the request from this father. The commander explained the situation and the responsibility of his children clearly in detail. The children also understood the need of the hour and enhanced their skills quickly. They joined hands with their father and saved the country from the enemy very easily. Now there is only one duty that is left to be completed: to find out the whereabouts of the king and the minister and hand over the kingdom to them. The left out work was completed by the father himself. He told his children, "Please forgive me. In order to save you both and develop you, I lied to you saying that I was your father. You are not really my children. The elder one among you is the prince and the younger one is the son of the minister. The king and the minister were killed by the enemy. I hid that from you. Only you are privileged to rule this country. You have all the knowledge and skills required to rule this country as the king and the minister. I request that the elder become the king and the younger become the minister and save this country and the people." The commander went ahead and made the elder to assume as the king and the younger the minister of the kingdom. Viveka, wisdom, and Vairagya, detachment from worldly pleasures, have been portrayed as the servants to explore the soul. In truth, Viveka is the minister's son and Vairagya is the prince. Like finding out the king and handing over the kingdom to him, these two folks, Viveka and Vairagya, are trying to find out the Atma Sakshatkar, direct awareness of the self. In reality, they are the ones that are going to crown themselves. Sadhana Chatushtaya, the four means of salvation, are nothing but the juggling to deceive ourselves. Atma Sakshatkar, direct awareness of the self, is not the highest level that we need to attain. The highest level that we should attain is only Mukti, liberation. The highest level that we should attain is Jnana, enlightenment. Viveka denotes Jnana, enlightenment, and Vairagya denotes Mukti, liberation. Viveka and Vairagya appear to be the sadhanas, disciplines. In truth, they are not the devices, but they are the destination. They are the goals to be achieved. What is indicated by Viveka, wisdom, and Vairagya, detachment from the worldly pleasures? What is Viveka? What is Vairagya? Distinguishing Nitya, eternal, and Anitya, transience, is wisdom. Distinguishing Atma from Anatma is Viveka. Distinguishing what is Atma and Anatma is wisdom. By discriminating this way, we get rid of deceptions and come into reality. We keep aside the Anatma and become Atma. Vairagya is keeping oneself away from the materialistic pleasures. Vairagya is dispassion for the pleasures of this world and of heaven. It is mental detachment from all worldly objects. Viveka and Vairagya are described this way. First, let us review what Viveka is. Distinction between Nitya, eternal, and Anitya, transience, is emphasized here. We are in front of a mirror. Our image reflects in the mirror. Reflection in the mirror is like a shadow. Actually, it is not an object. It is the reflective shadow of the object. We who stand in front of the mirror are the true object. The reflection seen in the mirror is not an object. It is only a mirror image. But that which is outside the mirror and what we see inside the mirror are ourselves. How do we split into two images when we were only one? In reality, we did not split into two. We are always one. What is seen inside the mirror is not another me. That is only the reflective image of mine. If you tell that image, as you resemble me, you go to the office instead of me, what will that image do? It will remain there. It doesn't act or move independently. But we are objects outside the mirror and can roam around freely as we wish. We can carry out all the necessary actions because we are not just illusions, not shadow. We can move around from there. We are the form of truth and reality. While we move, the image inside the mirror also can move. We are able to see ourselves as well as our reflective image. Is it difficult to find out which is true and which is not? Is there a challenge in finding out the object and the reflective image? We can very easily distinguish. It is possible even for a child to know the difference. Like this, can we know Nitya, eternal versus Anitya, transience? Atma versus Anatma? Is it really a difficult task to know the truth and the deception? Truth shall be obviously visible, shouldn't it? But is the truth visible like that? The person that is a true object in front of the mirror only sees his image in the mirror. The real person only sees both the true object and the image. Who is seeing the Atma and Anatma like this? Is it the Atma that sees itself and also its shadow like Anatma? Does the Atma only need Viveka, wisdom? Is it only required for the Atma to distinguish between the Atma and Anatma? In the same way, an effort is described in Siddhanta philosophy. They describe this by classifying into three categories: Pasu, Atma, Pati, God, Supreme Self, and Pasa, delusion. Pasu is the Atma. Pati is all-pervading Supreme God. Pasa is delusion, bondage, ignorance that hampers the free expression of the spirit. As the Atma is connected with delusion, it is bonded. If it is connected with God, then it is detached from the bondage. We who hinge on the bondage are given the responsibility of being connected with God. Next question is, how to be connected with God? Where to go to see God? How to unify with God? Is it possible to know God? Is God an object to be known? The Siddhanta philosophy says that God is not an object to be known. It is said that God is the life factor of one's life itself. Then, how to know God, who is inner life of one's life? How to hinge on to God? Vedanta also states that Atma and Anatma should be distinguished like this. Is it the Atma that distinguishes between Atma and Anatma? Or is it the Anatma that distinguishes between the Atma and Anatma? Does the Atma manifest in a confused state, or is it in a state of delusion? Is it hung onto attachment? Or is it the Anatma that is in attachment and ignorance? Atma is Chaitanya, a conscious factor. Anatma is Jatam, lifeless matter. We have already seen that there is neither issue in the Atma nor in the Anatma. We saw that there is an issue only in the aspect of Jiva, which is a combination of Atma and Anatma. We also saw that the jiva is only hinging onto attachments and that alone is trying to get rid of the bondages. Only jiva should distinguish between the atma and anatma. Only jiva should discriminate the nature of the atma and anatma that is manifested in us. What is the nature of our atma and anatma that are manifest in us? Chit aspect is the atma. When Chit aspect, awareness, manifests either as body consciousness or as mind consciousness, it is actually attributed to the non-conscious factor, anatma. We looked at the Chit aspect in 4 levels. Only the first level out of the 4 is actually the Chit. Rest of the 3 levels are just the expositions of the anatma. Is it the atma or anatma that has the ability to discriminate this way? The ability to discriminate this way lies only with anatma. Only the anatma has the ability to discriminate and classify them. Viveka is not related to atma. It is related to anatma. Anatma does not have the power to know Chit. Anatma, with the knowledge gained, can only assume the thing that it does not know or which does not come under its purview. Chit aspect, which is the first level, did not demonstrate itself, nor did it demonstrate to others about its nature, its power and its form. The senses and the mind, which act based on the source of Chit only, try to explain the Chit. Anatma only tries to understand Chit through 6 pramanas, different means of acquiring knowledge. Pramana is valid means for acquiring knowledge. There are 6 of these: perception, inference, scriptural or verbal testimony, analogy, presumption and non-apprehension. We looked at these 6 different pramanas in the 6th chapter of part 1. Here, we need the 6th means of pramana, that is based on the Aptavakya, trustworthy declarations. We need to accept the Chit aspect through the Vedic testimonies and the trustworthy declarations of the scholars. In the absence of an explanation available for the aspect Chit, which is eternal, to prove itself as eternity, even we, who are the jiva, are unable to understand and explain the eternal forms of the Chit aspect. All that we know is that the body and the mind that act based on the anatma are always changing. We see the body change. We see thoughts come and go. We see the emotions of the body and the mind come and go. We are able to see all this directly. These remain as our own experiences that we can know and understand. We can very clearly see that whatever that is within the boundaries of our experience are bound to change. There is no doubt about that. But can we know the unchanging Nitya eternal with the help of continuously changing Anitya transience? We can assume something using some reasonable causes. Assumptions are always transient. It is not compulsory that all assumptions may be true. They may be right or wrong. What is the necessity for us to assume and understand about this Chit aspect? Why is it necessary to assume that our natural state, the real form of the Atma, is eternal? Can we stop all the effort put in towards earning our food just based on the conclusion that we are immortals? In what way does the understanding that Chit aspect alone is eternal help? It is of primary importance to know that all anatmas are transient. Freedom from the clutches of anatma can be attained only when the transience is boycotted as transient. The fact that there is something eternal, Nitya, exists helps us to get rid of the clutches of Anitya. If we are climbing the staircase, we lift the leg from the first stair only when we keep the other leg on the second step. Something is required to keep the foothold if we need to detach from something. Our life is designed like that. Our lifestyle and our way of life are designed like that. We need something or other to cling on to. The Chit aspect that is in the first level did not require any solution for this. Only the nature of the mind that is in the third and fourth levels need solutions. It is this nature of the mind that acts to attain its own solution, tries to cling on to know the Chit aspect which is in the first level. This nature of the mind clings on to the Chit factor for the sake of its own solution. Because the first level does not fall under its boundaries, our mind seeks the assistance of pramanas, that is, the 6 different means of acquiring knowledge. We have already seen the activities of the mind. We own all the experiences from the reflections in our senses that act as the second level. We identify and understand everything in the third level by recording such reflections and converting them to memories. This third part contacts with everything that comes across by converting them into the mental forms. This mind also converts all the feelings that occur in the senses into psychological aspect. Even when it approaches something unknown, it connects psychologically based on the information it has gathered. In this way, be it Atma or Brahman or Chit factor, this third part, mind functions based on its knowledge gained through the psychological assumptions. Having been accustomed to connect through assumptions and reasoning, it also becomes easy for us to assume the Atma. As Shastras and many masters do support this reasoning and assumption, this also becomes vital. Because of this, some people get a feeling of mental satisfaction that they have known something that cannot be known. Outcome? They too get liberated. We cannot underestimate this kind of mukti. The mukti that they have attained is a real one, a complete one. Is it possible to attain mukti by this way of reasoning? Entire aspect of surrender is based on this assumption. Whatever attribute our surrender is based on, if it is based on total faith, it creates a state of mukti, liberation. Many great masters have attained this state of liberation through this surrender. Even knowing the Chit aspect through assumption becomes useful. How is it possible? It is possible because all our bondages are made of assumption. When there are no assumption, where is the question of having bondage, samsara, issues? So, the assumption that we do based on the Chit factor also helps us, gives solutions. Nitya, real eternity cannot be understood. It cannot be known. We can only understand the assumed eternity. We can assume the knowledge gained. But we do not like the term assumption. So, we set this term out. We become very happy to term this assumption as discriminative intelligence. Discriminative intelligence really means assumptions. Wisdom is nothing but a building constructed with the memories made from the experiences that are dead. Everything that we know through memories is nothing but assumption. They are not real. Sometimes they may harmonize with reality. Sometimes they may miss the reality. A friend had sent some messages from his mobile phone. Add 40 to the number 1000. After that, add another 1000. Then add 30. Add another 1000. Add a 20 with that. Add another 1000. Finally, add a 10 to that. How much will the sum be? 5000, right? But do this sum in the calculator. You will know the fact. There was another thoughtful scoop like this from his mobile phone. Mary's father had 5 daughters. He was passionate towards English grammar. He named his first daughter Nana, second one Nene, third one Nini, and the fourth one is Nono. What name would he have given to the fifth daughter? Nunu. You will understand whose father is naming like this if you read it once again. Our knowledge helps, but it comes to some conclusions hastily. Hence, the reality is also ignored. Reality is to know things as they are. In fact, it is not possible to know an object the way it is. We think that we are looking at a tree in front of us and that the tree is real truth. Do we know the reality of the tree really? Nobody can know the tree for real. We only know it through the reflections of the tree in our eyes. So, we assume the tree based on the reflection that is caused in the eyes. We feel the heat when we touch the fire. What is it that we feel? Is it the fire or the sense that reflects in the hands? We cannot know any object directly. We can only know the reflection that the object creates in our body and in the senses. The perceptions that is caused in the senses creates another reflection in our mind. It is this second reflection that we use to name and discriminate every object. Each reflection of ours is a kind of assumption only. First assumption is that of sensory perceptions. Psychological assumption is the second one. All our actions are some forms of assumption only. So, we need not consider that as inferior. To act in conjunction with assumption is our real action. Our cars are fitted with rear view mirrors so that we see the vehicles coming behind our cars. We see the vehicles coming behind us with the help of those rear view mirrors. Whenever we reverse the car, these rear view mirrors only help us a lot. Likewise, we need to connect with the real world through assumption only. If assumptions do not help us, we may not be able to understand anything through our thoughts. Understanding is nothing but knowing through assumptions. Now, how to know something that is beyond assumption? How to know the eternal form of Chit, which is the source for everything? Can the sky be measured with the help of a half-foot ruler? It can only be imagined that sky can be measured with the ruler. In fact, Viveka does not mean to know the eternity Nitya. Actually, giving significance to eternity is to get away from the attachment with Anitya, transient things, through the understanding of the transient nature of transience. Unifying with Pati, God, the absolute consciousness, is nothing but getting freedom from pasa, bondages. Pati, God, the Supreme Self, is not an object to be known, not an object to be obtained. We may be dependent on the bondages or we may be free of bondages. When we attain the bondage-free state, we are with Pati, the basic life of our life. It is the source of everything, base of everything. Viveka, in fact, is nothing but understanding this bondage, pasa. Within the reach of our limited knowledge, understanding what eternity is and what transience is, Viveka wisdom. This Viveka is sufficient. We need not have to confuse ourselves thinking that a different kind of discriminative wisdom is necessary. What we are going to see henceforth is the core section of this book. This is the core of human life. Upanishads and the Siddhanta philosophies are attempting to explain this. The help of Viveka is needed to understand this. Is this that difficult? No, it is simple. Very, very simple. That is why we miss this very easily. Viveka helps in understanding this correctly without missing out anything. This special core section is Vairagya. This is the prince that was admitted in the Gurukul by the Commander-in-Chief. We are going to crown this prince as the king. What is this Vairagya? Iga Amudra Bhoge Viragaga Vairagya. Vairagya is detachment from the worldly pleasures. It is dispassion for the pleasures of this world and of heaven. Vairagya is nothing but keeping away from the indulgences of luxuries of this world and the other heavenly world. This is how the Shastras, sacred scriptures, explain. It appears as if nothing is so significant in this Vairagya. It looks very dry without any interesting object. But the mystery of human life is contained in this. The mystery of spiritual life is contained in this. What is so special in keeping away from the luxuries and pleasures? Is the life complete without these luxuries and pleasures? A middle-aged person did a medical checkup for him. He did not have any disease. He sought advice from the doctor. What ways and means that I should follow in life to live for 100 years? The doctor wanted to know his lifestyle of activities. By knowing that, the doctor can actually give advice for a healthy life. Do you have the habit of drinking? No, no one drinks in our family. Do you have the habit of smoking? No, not that even. Do you like eating meat? No, we are vegetarians. We do not eat meat. Do you like eating fried food? No, never we eat fried items. Affair with ladies? No, I do not have such desires. Do you attend entertainment programs and keep yourself awake for a long time without sleeping? I do not attend entertainment programs at all. Now the doctor sits upright and asks the person, then what will you achieve by living for 100 years? What is life without such luxuries and pleasures? Is that mundane life without any entertainment called Vairagya? We enjoy various pleasures through our body and mind. We have only heard of heaven and hell, but we really do not know anything about the luxuries and pleasures available there. How to be free of all these unknown pleasures? Suppose there is a delicious food available. We relish that food. Relishing that food like this is a pleasure to us. We come into contact with such a food by tasting it. We connect with it through our desire. Instead of connecting with the food through our desire, if we connect with Vairagya, detachment, do we get the pleasure? We know what it means to come into contact with the substance with our desire. We do not understand what is meant by approaching the substance with Vairagya. Desiring for food for its taste is nothing but involving with the desire. Connecting with the food in the absence of a desire for its taste without involving in the food is like connecting with Vairagya. The comfort and pleasure you receive by approaching the food with Vairagya is 100 times superior to the comfort you get by approaching the food with desire. Experts of Shastras explain this way. We easily understand what is meant by seeking pleasure by approaching a substance with desire. But we never understand what is meant by seeking pleasure by approaching a substance with Vairagya. Could they probably have wrongly said that it is 100 times better? Definitely, they have said it wrongly. They have said it wrongly in haste. The statement that it is 100 times better is wrong. It will only be right if it is said that it is 1000 times better. What kind of explanation is this? This explanation is something that is practically impossible. What to do? It is like that. Suppose you are asked to choose any one opportunity out of two different opportunities given to you. First opportunity is like this. You will face pleasures and distress. Both will show up on you. You will be happy when pleasure surfaces. You wish that happiness should last forever and it should not go away from you. You become sad when you face distress. You are just not able to tolerate that and break down. Even after the suffering has gone away, you dread that it may come back again. This is the first opportunity. Next is the second opportunity. Like the first opportunity, you will face happiness and suffering here also. You are happy when you receive pleasure and become sad when you receive distress. But you accept both easily. You are not dreadful that the happiness will go away. Similarly, you are not dreadful that the distress may surface back. All kinds of experiences are here, but we are not attached to any experience. We set those experiences free. Those experiences also set us free. We get trapped in the clutches of the pleasures when we are in a mood thinking there should be only happiness, never any distress. We set ourselves free from the clutches of the pleasures when we are ready to accept the suffering also. When we are given these two opportunities, which one will we choose? When our mind acts in two different ways like these, which one would we prefer? Let us read these two kinds of activities once again and then decide. Both happiness and distress have full control on you in the first situation. You are tattered between both. The second situation also has both happiness and distress, but they do not have any control on you. Of these two, which one will you choose? Action of the second kind is known as action with Vairagya. Becoming free from the clutches of pleasure is Vairagya. The moment we are free from the clutches of pleasure, we are free from the clutches of suffering too. In the first situation, we become slaves of pleasure and distress. We are not slaves to anything in the second situation. An intelligent person will choose the second situation only. This second state is what is known as the state of Vairagya. The first state is the materialistic state full of bondages, samsara. Do we call choosing the second state as Vairagya? Does acting with Vairagya mean choosing this second state? No, definitely not. Choosing this second state is not Vairagya. We go to shop to buy things. If there is a shop, there will be many things available. There may be things that we need and things that we do not need. We choose only what we need. We bring them home after paying the necessary money for that. Should we choose a mind that acts with this kind of Vairagya? Do we follow Vairagya by choosing that way? Because Vairagya is described as one of the sadhana's disciplines, when we say one of the spiritual disciplines, should there not be space for effort and practices? Should we bring up this state by adhering to spiritual discipline sadhana? Only after necessary effort is put to practice the sadhana chatushtaya, 4 means of salvation, we understand our natural state of Atma through which we attain mukti. This is how it is explained. It is not true. All this is a drama that has been staged wrongly, but it is not a deceitful drama. It is a good drama that has been staged with good intention. But one should not be disappointed by believing that the drama is true. We cannot choose this second state, nor can we follow this as one of the spiritual disciplines to attain mukti. But there is no doubt that the explanation given for this second state is the state of Vairagya. That state of Vairagya is nothing but this second state. Total detachment towards the pleasure as well as the distress is the state of Vairagya. There is no doubt in that. If we have not chosen this, how to attain that? How to reach this second state? How to implement the state of Vairagya? Our normal natural state is this second state, the state of Vairagya. The state that happens when we do not choose anything is this second state, the state of Vairagya. Because whatever we choose, it will be an indication of having chosen pleasure only. Choosing pleasure is like ignoring distress. Similarly, ignoring distress is also like choosing pleasure. All our choices are against Vairagya, against the second state. We choose pleasure because of our ignorance. Hence, the normal state of Vairagya is ignored. Our ignorance is the cause of all our inner problems. Only if we get rid of this ignorance, we will not be choosing like this. It is very important to get rid of ignorance. Only when there is knowledge of what ignorance is, one can get rid of ignorance. Understanding through discrimination and assessment of everything with the help of our recorded memories is known as knowledge. If there is no such knowledge, if there is no such discrimination, it will not be possible to distinguish between a tree and a human. Discriminative knowledge is related to the outer physical world. It exists in order to carry out the external activities of the outer physical world. When we take this discriminatory knowledge to our inner psychological world, this discrimination itself becomes ignorance. It acts based on the discrimination where it is not needed. It chooses things where choice is not needed. Knowledge in the outer physical world becomes the ignorance in the inner psychological world. We see objects very clearly in daylight. All objects are visible clearly in sunlight. We understand that we can see things clearly in the sunlight. A day show is going on in the theatre. All the doors are closed and the entire theatre is dark. How will it be if we say, open the doors also? I want to see the movie in the sunlight. Light called the knowledge is needed for our life. It is needed for all our activities. We will not be able to carry out any action without knowledge. But the same knowledge becomes ignorance in the inner psychological world. If we bring knowledge to our inner psychological world, calculation will start setting in there. Hypocrisy sets in. Inner psychological world and the experiences of the inner psychological world are natural. Outer physical world is not like that. Outer physical world is made of actions. It is related to many others. Many others participate there. Inner psychological world acts only within our mind. Inner psychological world is nothing but the shadow experiences that we see in the mirror. We will not be able to create these shadows and manage them ourselves. It is enough if we understand and treat them as shadows. Discriminating these shadows called experiences with our rational as superior or inferior, good or bad, holy or disgraceful is ignorance. Considering ourselves as I am happens when we take our intellect within our mind. As far as the inner experience is concerned, only one experience occurs at a particular moment. Each experience stays for that moment only. New experience occurs each moment. Here, there is no experience as I or another one as occurring to me. When one gets angry, there is only anger. When someone is afraid of something, there is only fear. When there is distress, there is only distress. But when our knowledge enters inside, we understand by distinguishing these experiences as the fear that struck me, the anger that I got, and the distress that I suffered. Outcome? There occurs an inner crisis wherein the experience itself needs to run away from the experience. There occurs a crisis, a burden, wherein the experience itself needs to control and manage the experience. Life becomes a battlefield with search for happiness and expelling the distress. We call this as samsara bondage. We say we are in ajnana, ignorance. The reason behind all this ajnana is that we took our intellect to our inner psychological world. We falter without knowing that something which is admired and celebrated as intelligence has become ignorance here in the inner psychological world. Escaping from this intellect, this ignorance is the only way to implement the state of Vairagya. How to keep the intellect idle? Only when we discriminate, intellect acts. If we are unable to discriminate, intellect stops acting. can we make the intellect indiscriminate? A prisoner has escaped from the jail. The jail guards start searching for him. Does the prisoner have any easy identification mark? If there is something like that, he can easily be caught. He has shaved his head. This is his obvious identification. The guards who were searching for the prisoner with the shaven head kept on getting information about him. The guards continued to get reports that the prisoner was spotted here, spotted there, etc. The absconding prisoner went to Tirupati temple and mingled with the devotees there. Tirupati temple in India is well known for the practice of offering hair as a tribute to God, the Lord Balaji. Now, there was no information forthcoming on the prisoner. How to identify him with the shaven head when all the devotees in the temple are with shaven heads? If we paint all the experiences like this with the same color, the intellect will become inactive without the discriminatory power of choosing what is needed and what is not needed. What colors then can we paint all our experiences with? We do not need to paint anything new. Already in this way, many have painted with colors. Adi Shankara has also painted with such a color in his book Viveka Chudamani. What color? He has said all the experiences that we come across are the revelations of Chit aspect only. All our experiences are that of the Atma. Sarvam Brahmamayam. The universe is Brahman. He is all pervading. All is God's will. Like these, there are many approaches that have been formed which bring all our experiences under one color. As a result, we are unable to discriminate between necessary and unnecessary, good and bad, superior and inferior. In a state of this indiscrimination, our discriminative mind turns out to be idle. The discriminative intellect called Ajnana, ignorance, turns out to be idle. When intellect is idle, it does not try to activate the mind. It does not compel the mind to act. Our mental action too acts on itself without any interference of our intellect. The action that acts on itself the way it wants is called Vairagya. There is another name to this Vairagya. That is Mukti. That is freedom. That is liberation. Mukti and Vairagya are not different. Both are the same. This is a natural state. We cannot bring this Mukti, Moksha, freedom, awakening, liberation by hard work. It has been always with us naturally. There is no need to bring this by hard work. In fact, all our effort is interference to this, against this. Practicing Vairagya is against the nature. If Vairagya is natural, if we do not need to do anything with regard to that, then what is it that we need to do with regard to that? Is there anything that we need to do? Is there anything for us to do with regard to Vairagya? Our actions are until the Viveka. Only with the help of discriminatory power we can understand what we need to understand. It is our duty to understand that we need to decide carefully with patience, composure, with an open mind. It is our responsibility. We saw that Viveka is nothing but discriminating Nitya from Anitya. We also saw that we will not be able to know the Nitya eternity. We also saw that everything that we come into contact with and experience is momentary, subject to change and can vanish. Viveka is seeing Anitya as Anitya, transient. We are able to understand that all our psychological experiences are transitory. What is so special in it to call it Viveka? Do we need to understand Anitya also in a special manner? Our target is to attain Mukti through an understanding of who am I. We call all the psychological attachments and sufferings as samsara and getting freedom from them as Mukti, liberations. Our experiences are the manifestations of the Chit aspect of the Atma. Only that Chit aspect is the source. Everything else is its manifestation. Only that Chit aspect, which is the source, is eternal Nitya. All its manifestations are Anitya, momentary, transient. Chit aspect cannot be understood by the manifestation it caused. It is not at all possible to know the Chit aspect. We have already seen this. Now, there are only the transient psychological experiences that were the manifestations of the Chit. What is the problem in the approach towards considering this transient nature as Anitya, transient? Instead of approaching this Anitya as Anitya, we approach that considering it as Nitya, eternal. How is that possible? Anitya is apparently visible. Maybe the Chit aspect, which is Nitya, eternal, is not so visible. But is it not so obvious that all our psychological experiences are transitory? How can we treat that as Nitya, eternal? But we consider that as Nitya, eternal only. So, once again, the discrimination of eternal and transient, Viveka of Nitya and Anitya are needed to be viewed here in a different dimension. What is that different dimension? How do we consider our transient psychological experiences as eternal? We board a stationary vehicle. Do we board a running vehicle? All our psychological experiences are Anitya only, running vehicles only. But unknowingly, we consider those experiences as Nitya, eternal. Unknowingly, we consider the running vehicle as stationary one. How is that possible? Unconsciously, we are interested to retain all the pleasurable experiences forever. What is the meaning of this? We take it for granted that there is a chance for all the happy experiences to stay with us permanently. Similarly, we wish that all the sufferings shall go away from us. What is the meaning of this? We misunderstand that the sufferings will stay with us eternally. We presume that if only we do something about it, it becomes transient and will go away from us. We understand like this unconsciously. We act based on the understanding that the psychological experiences are Nitya, eternal. This happens without our knowledge. Only happy experiences give us mental satisfaction. We try to make these pleasurable experiences permanent. All psychological experiences are like flowing river. What will happen if we try to block the gushing river? There will be a tug of war between us and the river. Only the tendency to pursue pleasure claims a permanent nature, eternity, Nitya. As far as our transient psychological experiences are concerned, this kind of seeking eternity in transience exists as a problem. Transience, Anitya, is not a problem. The effort to create eternity in transience is the problem. Seeking pleasure and indulging in pleasure is called as bhoga. The desire to have pleasure is gratification. That is the reason for searching Nitya, eternity, in Anitya, transient things. Knowing the truth of transience is seeing transience as transience. Knowing the truth of Anitya is seeing Anitya as Anitya. Trying to make a part of the transience as eternity is what causes a hindrance to see transience as transience. It prevents truth, brings problems, brings distress, causes attachment, causes bondages. As far as the inner emotions and experiences are concerned, there is nothing to search or attain. If we are searching for something, then it is the affinity towards pleasure. That is the effort to make it eternal. The tendency to attribute eternity in transience is wrong. Understanding that mistake is real Viveka. This real discrimination of transient and eternal things is a practical possibility which we all need. This is Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. As far as bhoga, pleasure is concerned, two different kinds of gratification are described: material pleasure and heavenly pleasure. It is enough if we understand these as bodily pleasure and psychological pleasure. All bodily pleasures can be considered as material pleasure. The pleasure obtained through our senses is material gratification. The happiness and composure that we derive from mind can be called heavenly gratification. Ecstatic states attained during meditation and so are also mind-related. Even though we distinguish some of the experiences as our psychological experiences, they emerge with the help of the nervous system in our body. Even then, there is nothing wrong in distinguishing them as psychological experiences. In total, we cause hindrance in the movement of our experiences that are flowing like a river because of the desire towards pleasure. And understanding that it is right to keep away from the pleasure is Viveka. Thereby, a state of Vairagya functions freely. The state of Mukti, liberation, which does not remain in anything, functions freely. All the three words, Vairagya, freedom and Mukti, denote the same state. It indicates all our psychological experiences flowing like a gushing river without any hindrance. Vairagya is not any particular psychological emotion. Vairagya is not a particular psychological experience also. Vairagya is all about the psychological emotions and experiences that flow like a river. This is liberation. This is Mukti. Viveka, that is the reason behind this Mukti, is Jnana, enlightenment. Jnana and Viveka are the same. Vairagya and Mukti are the same. Searching for some strange Jnana or Mukti outside this is not a practical reality. Mukti is our natural state. It is not necessary to attain it. It is enough if the state of Mukti is understood and no hindrance is caused to that.